And it's day 2 of my vlog every day for a week. And as the title above me says, today it is Nintendo! Woo! I was gonna do originally video games, but I changed my mind and decided to just do a general look at Nintendo. It's more focused on old Nintendo than current Nintendo, because, well, A, it's more interesting, and B, you're in current day Nintendo, so you can go look online if you really care that much. I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm going to tell you what Nintendo was, not what Nintendo is. Okay, let's start. Founded on the 23rd of September 1889 by Busujiro Yamauchi, it only originally produced playing cards called Hanafuda, which were cards that looked like this. Pretty pictures! The origin of the name Nintendo comes from these cards. It means leave luck to heaven, and the company just continued to produce cards for the next 60 or so years, and in 1953 the company began to produce plastic cards, which made them big. I mean, huge. I know it sounds like it is boring, but apparently it was a rather rare thing to have plastic cards. Oh! And allowed them to dominate the card market. And in 1959 they struck a deal with Disney. Meaning that they could put Disney characters on their cards. I mean, in 59 there probably wasn't that many, but still, it allowed them to approach the more family-friendly market. Meaning that the cards, which had just been seen as a tool for gambling, now had a more family-friendly market and could go to lots and lots more people. Meaning that they could rule the world.
Of course!
Not quite, they dominated the card market even more, but still, close enough. Due to this success, the company then went public in 1962, meaning that it was open to the stock exchange. And for the next 6 years, they ventured into many, many different fields, not just cards. Including a taxi service, a chain of love hotels, love testers, a remote control vacuum cleaner, a food company, and a TV network, just to name a few. However, all were doomed to fail, except for when they went into toys, because, considering it was originally a card company, this was the only field of expertise that they really had, so it caused a massive drop in their share prices, and they plummeted. On the verge of bankruptcy, Nintendo struggled to survive, even as a toy company, and as the market was already dominated by existing toy companies like Bandai and Tony. In 1970, the company found his great-grandson, who was manager at the time, went to observe one of his factories, where he saw that this guy, Gunpei Yokoi, had developed some rather unique toy, and he decided that he liked it so much that they would mass-produce and sell it. It went on to sell millions of units, and saved the company from bankruptcy. So, they promoted him from lowly engineer all the way up to company producer, but he went on to production. Basically, he went on to production. Yokoi would then go on to sell this. It is a precursor to the early night guns of the NES. And finally, 1975, Nintendo enters the video game market. It took them quite a while to get here, but here we are, where it acquired the rights to this, the Magna OMX Odyssey, which they could only sell in Japan at the time. And then, in 1977, after a joint venture with Mitsubishi Electronic, they released their own console, the Color TV Games 6 and Color TV Games 15. The 6 and the 15 refer to the number of games that the console could play. The next big game console success was this, the Game & Watch. It was the first handheld device, but each device could only play one game, so it was rather limited, but it still saw worldwide success. It was around this time that they hired this guy. Now, who is he, I hear you cry? Well, he is Shigeru Miyamoto, and he is practically the godfather of Nintendo, because his first game he created was this. Donkey Kong! Which not only saw the origins of this guy, and to an extent her, but also him. Yes, you're looking at Jumpman, the precursor to Mario. 1983 we saw the release of this, the Famicom, in Japan, but unfortunately due to a malfunctioning chip in it, all the shelf products had to be returned to manufacturer, which cost the company over $500,000, which is quite a lot, really, if you really think about it, even more so back then. But anyway, well, I digress. They decided to release this product to America, after, of course, they fixed the problem. But during the 80s, there was the big video game market crash, which caused companies like Atari and, among others, to sink and completely wipe out. So this was a very risky move, and they released it as the Nintendo Entertainment System, and created their seal of quality and a chip inside the system which prevented illegal and unlicensed games, which were the menace back then, to be used on the system. And, in a slightly surprising twist, they decided to limit a game company to only 5 games for their system per year. Of course, companies found a way around this, of course, like you do. All they simply did was like, okay, we're one company, these are our 5 games, so we'll make a minor company, they can produce 5 games, and then we may make another one, and they can produce 5 games. Oh my god, our company technically made 15. What are you gonna do, Nintendo? With the release of the NES, as it was more commonly known in North America, saw the release of this guy. He was called Rob. What is wrong with Rob, you may ask? Well, he was an attachment that meant that if you didn't have a second player, because you were like this guy, then you could play a game, a 2-player game, even without a second player. But he sucked, and I mean sucked. It was a big flop that nobody ever got into. But it also saw the release of this with the console, and that is friggin' awesome. The next few years also saw the release of other famous franchises, like Metroid and The Legend of Zelda, just to name a couple. And all of these received critical acclaim. Then came Super Mario Bros. 2. There's nothing wrong with it, I just wanted to do the shocked face. Sequel to games were rather rare back then. In 1989, we also saw the release of the Game Boy. The little black and white screened block, but it became the biggest selling handheld game system of all time. Not sure if it has that record still today due to the outlandish selling of the Nintendo DS, but it's probably up in there. They then decided to retire the NES, with the last big blockbuster for the console being Super Mario Bros. 3. But after the NES came the SNES, which is the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, in 1991. Still cartridge-based, but they began to develop CD attachments, in league with Sony, of course. However, at the last minute they decided to drop out. No one really knows why they did this, but they reckon that either Sony wanted full rights to it or wanted too much money in the venture. Around this time, Nintendo was the #1 game console in Japan. However, thanks to the scourge of Sega and their Sonic the Hedgehog, it wasn't in North America. The Sega Genesis was. But Nintendo climbed to the top thanks to such great games as Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and Street Fighter 2, one of the best fighting games ever, and a little odd series you've probably never heard of. You've never heard of them, have you? In 1992, they wanted to start work on virtual reality consoles. They made this, the Virtual Boy, but due to poor sales, the system was thankfully scrapped, and it was discontinued. They never worked on really anything virtual reality again. We arrive in the year 1996. They released their first 64-bit console, appropriately named, of course, the Nintendo 64, which was the first real game to have proper 3D graphics, and this, the Rumble Pack, which was the first for home gaming and eventually became an industry standard. This year also saw the release of a whole wave of pure awesome. I can't turn my hat back, but you get the idea. It looks exactly the same, but I think you've got the idea. It saw the release of Pokemon! Gotta catch 'em all, Pokemon! This game proved so popular that it actually put Nintendo back on top. The next few years saw a wave of portable and non-portable consoles. We had the Game Boy Color in 1998, the Game Boy Advance in 2001, and the GameCube in 2001, which was good, but it was not a success at all. Competition probably from the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, which had just been released, did not help sales at all. 2004 saw the release of the Nintendo DS. This is the first handheld console to have a touchscreen and had 3D capabilities. It wasn't quite as good as the Nintendo 64, but due to the screen size, this is kind of expected. And it became one of the best-selling handheld consoles, with a pre-order sales of over 3 million, mostly due to the family-friendly image of it, and the fact that anyone can play, because there was Dr. Kawasaki's brain training, dogs, whatever it was called, I don't know, doggy game for kids. And there was also like Grand Theft Auto Chinatown and stuff. So there was a mix of games for good gamers and just regular folk. 2006 saw the release of the Nintendo DS Lite, which was just the Nintendo DS, but smaller. But this also saw the release of the Wii, which, again, due to the family-friendly image, was a big, huge seller, and one that would not be repeated by either Sony or Microsoft until around 2010 with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 trying, and with limited success, to meet the same level with the Move and Kinect kind of idea. But again, I don't think either of those worked, but that's an entirely different story. Next came 2008 with the Nintendo DSi and the Nintendo DSi XL, because the original DSi was tiny and pointless. It just was the DS, but with cameras. 2 cameras and video editing software. The next only big change came with the Nintendo 3DS, which I've actually played and is really awesome, but my brother seems to suffer from terrible headaches when he tries, so it's not for everyone. It's a 3D that works without 3D glasses. It's basically an optical effect that tricks your brain. It's really cool. It's quite clever, but it's another gimmick that I don't think works. And that brings us to today, where Nintendo is still going rapidly strong, and in a few months' time we'll see the release of the Wii U with the iPad kind of controller that looks really cool, but I don't think will work. We'll have to wait and see. E3 just was on, so I have to watch some stuff on that to see what games are, because there's a really cool zombie game that I like the look of, but I don't know how good it's going to be. So yeah, it's going to be around for some time, and that's the history of Nintendo, as told by me, Jones. I don't know if you learned anything. I probably didn't. I actually learned stuff because I probably said the same things 7 times before I got it actually even close to what I wanted it to be. Even then it's probably not accurate enough. But anyway, this is me.